have landed on The Substance. I'm your host, Trevor Aiken, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Philip Marinello.
Hey, Trev.
And Vincent Edwards.
What's going on?
So, hold on. Before we go too far, do you want to be Vincent or Vince? Or are we just going to kind of shuffle back and forth here?
Vince or Vincent's fine. Just not Victor.
Great.
Just not Victor?
Which one is it going to be?
People do call me Victor.
Victor?
Yeah.
That's kind of like, I got a grade school teacher who called me Kevin once.
What?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's Trevor.
Kevin.
Vincent.
There's a V in there. That's about it.
I don't know.
All right.
I messed up.
So, sorry to get us off track immediately.
I mean, you are a winner.
Hey. I'm just trying to say.
And you're Philip or Phil.
Sure.
I know.
Yeah, either is fine.
I know there's some people who have opinions on that.
Yeah, I know my mother used to feel very passionately about Philip, which I always say I'll take Philip, but I prefer Philip, but I will happily take Phil. Anyway.
Sweet.
Topic toss-up. Man, this is our fifth one. Probably our most popular format, I think.
Is there a fifth? I thought we did 3 in the original run.
I don't know. I think this is number 5. I think we did 4.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Listeners can correct us.
Pretty sure
we did 3.
We'll figure it out somewhere along the line.
Me and Vince or Vincent is correct, I think.
Okay. Well, you guys, the listeners will know because I'll have labeled it either Topic Toss-Up 4 or Topic Toss-Up 5.
We don't need to start numbering the top. Whatever. You do what you want. This is Topic Toss-Up episode, everybody.
All right. So what we're going to do is kind of like what? It's not a lightning round, but it's like...
No, not at all. I mean, the 2 main formats of show, we have a couple different versions of the show here, and if you haven't listened to any of the previous episodes and you're just joining us, we do long form talks, call them reflections, where we go 45 to 60 minutes on a topic, and then on the topic toss-ups we cover 3 or 4 topics in 10 to 15 minute segments, so a little bit shorter covering of things. It's not to say that any of this is the final word. Our whole goal here at The Substance is to start conversation. So I'm sure over the years we will be covering similar. I'm sure over our first year back here we'll be covering similar ground because there's so much going on in the world.
I feel like we're already back to some similar ground.
Hey. All right. You wanna lead your first topic here, Trev?
Well, yeah. You gonna clock me on this?
Oh, sure. Let me get my timer here going.
All right.
Thank you for that reminder.
It is. No problem.
That's a calculator.
Do you know how long-winded I get? No, I'd love it if you clocked me with a calculator. That'd be great. Yeah, so recently, we just released our politics episode and some of the things we were talking about there, but kind of like right after that happened.
After we recorded that.
Yeah.
And we recorded that a while ago.
Right. John MacArthur, who, pretty large figure in Christianity, faithful pastor.
And tall man.
He is pretty tall. He's got that like pulpit that like comes out of the stage or something. Anyhow, we've talked about his content, especially in political realms
undeniably,
before.
like very significant figure, really admirable in a ton of ways over the last several decades. Very influential character.
Recently appeared on a podcast with the Falkirk Center, I believe it was, which was put together by Charlie Kirk and Jerry Falwell Jr. He basically, I mean, you can go there and check out the clip. Let me just start
in the show notes.
Should I just like say the full quote? I'm going to say the full quote. He says, he was talking about a phone call he had with President Trump, and he was telling the host, "We talked about why, from a biblical standpoint, Christians could not vote Democratic. Because there's no way that a Christian can affirm the slaughter of babies, homosexual activity, or marriage, or any kind of gross immorality. No way we could stand behind a candidate who was affirming transgender behavior. So I said, these things aren't even political for us. These things are biblical. So any real true believer is going to be on that's Trump's side in this election because it's an entire set of policies that Christians cannot affirm.
So we cannot tolerate gross immorality. Therefore, we must support this man." So that was the statement that he made. So you want to tie it back to like our initial segue there?
Yeah, because in our previous episode, and even going back to the very first episode in season 1 that we ever released, we've talked about how, okay, yes, if there was such a thing as a moral party and an immoral party, then there would be a Christian vote, in a sense, a thing that you were bound to do, obviously, because don't do the immoral thing, do the moral thing. However, if there is immorality on both sides, then you have to order moral issues in a way according to your conscience, that is a liberty issue, and therefore you cannot say that one side or the other is the Christian vote. And we've said something similar in our politics episode last week, and we're going to say it again here, that this is completely wrong. I just want to be clear about that. Like, you can't say, well, the true Orthodox Christian position is a Republican vote. You can make, and I want to give.
I think this is the first time we've mentioned a party by name here, because we really try to keep things principial here and about ideas and propositions and like the heart of the matter and the principle is always what's the most important thing. But when
it's
when
not
you
even
have
about
a leader,
the party, really, though.
No. But when you have a leader of that stature, put a name on it, then we have to address it directly.
Right, and I mean we talked before even about our own party affiliations, which
we did,
may or may not have changed over time, but the whole this is the Christian vote. That's the issue. Like, you can make a conscience level argument on, hey, believers, I want to appeal to your conscience. These are the things morally that are important to me. You can do that, but what you cannot say is, if you don't vote this way, you are wrong. You are in sin.
So let's work on some of the questions. We're not going to be shy. That's probably well-meaning, but like fundamentally an incorrect and flawed line of thinking. So we just want to put forth some ideas and some questions and some principles to help us think, okay, how ought we to think about things? How ought we to be having these conversations like among one another? Because this is a thing that should be discussed at the dinner table and at small groups and among, like, on your text chain with your Christian brothers and sisters. Like, this is not, we're not saying it's unimportant.
Actually, that is something I do like about this, because at least here, the implicit assumption of conservative Christianity is being
on display,
laid on the table.
Yeah, no, he just came out straight up and said, no,
is.
Christians equal Republican. Like, for a long time, it kind of seems like everybody's saying Christian equals Republican, but he's like, no, Christian equals Republican.
Yeah, we were even
full stop.
We were trying to read between the lines of his over almost 2 years ago now interview with Ben Shapiro, and we were trying to read, what does he mean by this? Is he trying to say that? But now he's just clear about it. Here's what I'm saying, and I think there's a way to do that. There's a way to talk. Like, it's not that we shouldn't talk about politics in church. Like, we were just talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
So do we want to hit some of the three things he mentioned, or how do you want to hit this with the time that we have?
That's good. Yeah, I was saying, I think there is value to pointing out, like, because I do think that whether you agree with MacArthur or not comes down to whether or not you agree that there is a moral versus an immoral party.
Yeah, and I think that's how people are thinking about it currently, at least, that there's, the topic that he mentioned of abortion and certain topics. People are saying, well, my theology is leading me to make this vote. And so a person who says that they're a Christian and they hold the same theology can't have a different vote. And so that's what makes it so clear in the mind of an individual who does think that it's a moral vote. And I understand, I'm gracious to how they get to that conclusion, but I think it doesn't acknowledge the gray in politics.
Well, and the frustrating part is when you have a leader of that stature and that influence say something like that, it reinforces the us versus them, and then it puts Christians who do care about what God says about abortion and the sanctity of life and God honoring sexuality. It paints them as the bad guys and wrong.
Right.
So, let's look at, abortion and homosexuality are the two big ones.
Yeah. So if you just break down his argument, even if his arguments were right, what he said was incorrect, even if he was right about abortion, homosexuality being these things, but he's not, I don't think he's completely right on those things either.
So what are some good questions, like how do we come to that
The first
conclusion?
question that came to my mind is it even true that the president does not support, using his words, homosexual activity and marriage, when literally within 7 days of MacArthur making this statement, the president retweeted someone saying that he was the most pro-gay president ever. So Trump has no problem owning publicly the title of, I am the most pro-homosexual president that there's ever been in the history of America. So how is he then the uphold, like in this area, how is he then the upholder of Christian values on homosexuality? Like, to me, that there's just an ignorance there about the president's own statements about his positions on these things.
And again, we're keeping things to specific statements and propositions and truths. We all have a lot of respect for John MacArthur.
Right.
And we all have a lot of respect for a lot of other people who are faithful ministers of lesser stature, people we know personally and our friends and family group who think these exact same things. Probably like some of you guys listening who think these exact same things.
And the thing is, I'm not saying if you disagree with me, you are fundamentally errant as a Christian. That's the big difference that I'm pointing out here.
Say that again.
I'm not saying that if you disagree with me, like if you do think that, oh, okay, no, that doesn't matter, that Trump said he was a pro-gay president. What John MacArthur said is still true. Okay, but I'm not saying that if you disagree with me, you are therefore not acting as a true believer when you disagree.
True Christian is what he said. Like, he's making the delineation between like
that's the key issue.
True and not true.
That's the key issue.
I had a conversation 2 weeks ago with somebody who I know very well. They just said straight up, yeah, I would really question the salvation of folks who vote Democrat. And it's like, why?
Yeah. All right, I'm going to step in it here. Let's hit abortion real quick.
Because it is something that both sides, frankly, the left and the right, deal with very disingenuously, especially around election.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So up front, to be clear, I believe that abortion is murder based on the humanity of the unborn life. And I do believe it should be illegal under the Constitution, which under the 14th Amendment requires equal protection under the law for all persons. So let's just be clear on that up front. However, I don't believe that John MacArthur is correct in his assumption that a pro-life quote-unquote position is the only way to support unborn lives. The question in our society is not just one of making a moral affirmation, but interacting together in a secular society where views differ. We've said this before.
So dumb that down a little bit.
Interaction can't happen if one side's the good guys and the other side's the bad guys.
So it's not just about standing on your soapbox. It's we agree.
Yeah.
Abortion is immoral and evil and detrimental to us as a society. So let's figure out how to minimize it, not just bang the drums as loudly as we can saying we don't like it.
Yeah, and
because the goal should be to have less lives taken, not more rallies where we say we don't like it.
And to quote somebody popular, facts don't care about your feelings, right? Which is an awful thing to say. But the raw facts are that the party affiliation of the president has had no effect on abortion rates since Roe. That's for half a century.
So to say that because of what the Bible says theologically about the nature of God and the nature of man, that makes abortion unequivocally evil. That is the statement. That's the proposition. Because of that, you therefore have to vote for a president that gives lip service to this thing, when in reality, there's no correlation between those two things.
And I love the thing I saw, but a vote is not a marriage. It's like public transportation, right? So you've got a bus, you're trying to get somewhere, and you get on the bus. Like, it doesn't matter if it doesn't take you directly to your destination like a taxi. Like, you're not married to it forever. You ride it as far as it goes, and then you get off when you're done. That's it. And it's not the case that, oh, well, if this party says something evil, then you vote for them. Then you vote for every evil thing they do, or you vote for all of that evil stuff. Like,
because if that was true, especially in this election with this man and his public record on a number of legal crimes and publicly owned immorality.
Sure.
To say that only true believers will support this person is just kind of...
You say legal crimes?
No, like by the definition of the law, like he's broken the law.
Again, not to be the devil's advocate here or anything.
No, do it.
To try to add the dissenting voice, especially to give a voice quickly and you can quickly respond to it. I think what's being said is, okay, even if the pro-life movement hasn't done a whole bunch for abortion, at the very least, it's against it. And the other side is for it. And so I would much rather partner myself with an organization or a movement or a particular position that at least doesn't like it than one that does or wants to promote it.
Yeah, the two responses to that.
I think that, Trevor, you'll probably be more eloquent. I'll let you finish it off. For me, you're talking about the facts that was that John Fia's article that you were referencing?
Not necessarily.
He had a really good one recently.
I'm sure he did.
It's not, it's public knowledge in a number of places, but you do have the Democratic Party who promotes, their public platform promotes the legal protection of abortion. And then you have the Republican Party whose public platforms, I'd say, incentivize abortion through the slashing of social programs, a lot of things that would make...
Like here tables flipping.
No, and Republican social platforms do tend to incentivize abortion.
Yeah, check out Colorado. It happened. Yeah.
And look at the various different municipalities over the last several decades, and you see the abortion rates, and you see what policies tend to actually have impact. Again, if the number of lives of innocent unborn children, if saving those lives is what matters the most, the Republican Party's policies do not tend to save more lives. They just talk about it and get the evangelical vote because the evangelicals are probably uninformed on some of those things and they like to hear about it.
Yeah. So I think that'd be one of my responses is understand that there is some more data that people can pull into this that might nuance it. And so don't say that yours is the Christian way. It's a Christian, like that is a Christian way to respond, to feel like, listen, I'm bound on my conscience to not agree with my vote, in a sense, with somebody who is saying this thing that I really just have a lot of, I just don't like that a lot. You know, I disagree with that heavily. Okay. The second thing then also is because politicians know that if they say I'm pro-life, they're going to get the Christian vote.
Yep.
Right.
Are they indeed genuinely pro-life? It's just something to think about. If that's like really what's selling you is the fact that, well, these people really, really believe in this and I want to make sure my beliefs align with their beliefs, but what if
is it just a line?
What if they know how to build a base?
And we mentioned that in our very first episode ever, the Shapiro MacArthur one. Like, we should not be, as believers, we're called to be, and MacArthur, he is banging that drum for decades. I almost said centuries. That's hilarious. For decades. Discernment.
20th and 21st.
We should not be politically, obviously the spiritual realities are more important than the political realities, but politically to be tossed to and fro by every changing wind.
Sure.
Like if somebody comes in and all it takes to get your money, your support, your vote is for them to say words that you like to hear. If that is literally it, just say, hey, I'm pro-life. If that's all it takes to get your vote, that does not strike me as being actively discerning. Do they have a pro-life record? And not just do they vote on making abortions illegal. If abortion matters to you, which I'm sure it matters to some, but if it's just a weird identity thing that you're like, I'm on team no abortion, someone else is there on team no abortion, they get my vote. But like, again, saying you don't like abortions and trying to protect the lives of unborn children, those are sometimes two very divergent things.
Amen.
That's clarity.
All right, Vince, what we got next?
Well, slow it down. We'll chill it out for a second.
I need that. I need that in my life.
And that's what I'm excited to be doing toss-ups again, man. This is great.
Good.
Yeah. I want to put the proposal out that Mondays are actually amazing.
Okay.
I changed it from just Mondays to Mondays are actually amazing. Here's why.
Okay.
First, I want to start by saying that the biblical view of the inherent value of a day, I would say, is good because God created a day and said it was good. And then he did a whole bunch of different things in that and said those things were good as well. So I think the inherent value, in the same way that we look at idolatry later on in the Old Testament, and a tree by itself has an inherent value of being good because God made it. But then if you cut it down and carve it and dip it and worship it, then it's an idol, and what you're doing is sin. So I think if first we start with the inherent biblical value of a day is a good thing. And then we move forward to, because of that, I think we have gotten kind of roped in, or at least duped into thinking that Mondays are bad just because really culture says it is. And so we go into Mondays, we go into work, and I want to qualify that by saying, yes, some days can suck. And so it's not to say that Mondays can never actually be bad, but it's more to say that if it's not actually going bad, Mondays can actually be a good day. And we don't have to feel pressured by culture, society, work culture, whatever, to be like, it's a drag just because it's Monday.
It's a weird phenomena.
Because you can ask people about it and they'll be like, oh, how's your day? Oh, well, it's Monday. And it's like, but what does that mean?
I don't know, man. I think you're showing your privilege that you get a weekend.
Yo, yeah. I work in banking, so I do get my weekends.
That is funny.
Sometimes extra weekends.
Extra weekends?
Because of like bank holidays and stuff.
Oh, okay.
All right, second counterpoint. Romans 14:5. One person regards one day holier than other days, and another regards them all alike. Each must be fully convinced in his own mind.
Sure, I agree with that. But I do know that in Romans 14, the presupposition to that text is to honor God. And I don't think I don't see how a person could claim to honor God by complaining about Monday.
Yeah. I mean, what I hear you saying is kind of like what Paul says in Philippians, just don't complain.
Right. I mean, again, there are some days that are pretty busy and terrible.
Like
and
Saturdays.
All things that could go wrong.
When you work on Saturday in retail.
Oh, yeah.
And all the banking people come in
enjoying
their weekend.
Like, how many weekends is this for you?
No, but yeah, that's what I think. So I personally, I enjoy Mondays. I think Mondays are fun.
Yeah.
And fine.
It's a fresh start.
Fun and fine.
How do you feel about Mondays, Phil?
I mean, so I definitely know what you're talking about, especially like it's popular on social media. I haven't been in an office environment, thankfully, for quite a while. But I mean, you hear people talk. It's like, oh, like back to the grind, TGIF, like can't wait for the weekend. And that's not great. But I mean, yeah, work has dignity. Work is good. The dawn of every new day is good and has good possibilities. And I mean, just pragmatically, like we're all young men seeking to build our families and take care of ourselves. It is a good thing to go into work with energy and excitement and focus and not going into work trying to like dread and avoid the act of work.
Yeah. And I think as Christians, we have a responsibility to do that in the system that we have, right? Whether that's retail or whether that's if you don't have a set schedule, you're all over the place, whether that's late shifts versus early shifts, whether that's Mondays, if you're working an office job, that kind of thing, like all of these things are their own trials in a way. And in a sense too, we could also look at like, okay, the whole system of work, like are we overworking people, stuff like that? Like, is that part of the thing? But whatever you might think about those different things, at the end of the day too, we are accountable for our responses. And the Lord has said, hey, do the stuff that you do without grumbling or complaining.
Yeah.
And I wonder how many of those people, how many of the folks, because not everybody complains about Mondays. Even secularly, one of the guys who I follow on a number of platforms, Gary Vee, he's a super big like entrepreneur, rah-rah kind of guy. Like he's like leading like a secular campaign to like make Mondays a thing. For a long time, every Monday he'd put out a playlist called like Monday to Monday to like get people amped up to go work and stuff like that. But I mean, I wonder how many folks who complain about Mondays, who like do the memes and all that stuff. I wonder how worse they actualize and make their own work days.
Yeah.
When you go into something going, this is going to be terrible, this is going to be awful.
You think like, even if you're joking?
Yeah, because like we have power and influence. Like God made our bodies to respond to stimuli, and like the most powerful stimuli is internal stimuli. Like what we with our brains, our hearts, whatever you want to call it, like what we tell ourselves is powerful. So if we tell ourselves, hey, this sucks, even if it's just kind of like going with the flow and this is part of our culture, we just kind of complain and it's hilarious to make all these killer Monday jokes. Like we program ourselves to either be miserable or bring other people down, like for sure.
Are there even really like that many funny Monday jokes? And like, it's a Monday joke. Like, oh, Mondays are bad. Like, that's new.
Oh, geez.
Now, I'm sure there's some killer Monday comedy out there, but I'm saying it's probably not beneficial.
Hit us up with your killer nut.
Yeah, send Trevor at Trevor Aiken your very best Monday meme.
Yep, send it to him.
Oh, Lord.
Now, I will say that because I asked a guy about Mondays because this is back when I was younger, and he did say it was because Saturday Sunday partying was pretty hard, pretty heavy.
Yeah,
and so he's just coming in with a hangover, and so he might have an actual legitimate claim to having a pretty poor Monday.
Well,
it's not unique to Monday necessarily. I'd say.
I don't know that a wanton lifestyle on the weekend legitimizes your complaining on Monday.
Well, in the sense of like it probably his assessment of the Monday and him not enjoying it is probably pretty accurate, even though it's like
I mean, he could get blitzed any night of the week, and the next day would be bad. That's not unique.
Monday's fault.
Yeah. Wednesdays are terrible.
Monday's like, leave me alone, man.
But yeah,
you should probably drink in moderation more, guy.
Yeah, well,
I did suggest that.
Yeah, this is our counseling session at the Substance. Just stop it.
Yeah, don't do that.
That's not good counseling. Actually, we're joking.
What are we joking about?
Saying stop it to something is not just.
No, that's true.
The most kind-hearted counseling.
No, it isn't. But I was like, shouldn't they stop complaining? No, you're correct.
Yeah, it
is short-sighted, and especially with a grown-up, that's not always a very helpful thing.
Yeah, email us if you want a real conversation about whatever, or email your pastor. That'd be better.
Yeah, start with them first.
Yeah,
I just got completely thrown off there.
Well, that's what I'm good for. Kind of the role I play.
So what about you, Phil?
Okay, I think we're only going to do 3 today here. The topic that I wanted to bring up was there are 2 aspects of this. Neither of them are my favorite thing, and we can kind of figure out how to address this here. But I actually had a listener and a friend of mine bring a, we'll say, questionable tweet to my attention, sent it to me in the DMs, and I looked at it, and I was like, that's interesting. It strikes me as not great, so I'll read it.
They wanted us to weigh in on this?
No, not even necessarily. He just sent it to me like, look at this Christian bozo.
Oh, gosh.
Just because we'll probably get around to this at the end of this topic, but just a disclaimer at the beginning.
Careful with the bozo stuff.
Oh, no. Like, he sent it to me like, look at this bozo.
Oh, that's what he said.
Because Christians, man, are sometimes bozoing hard online. So all that to say, like, realize that both the world is looking and seeing the things we put out there online, and also even if you delete stuff, like, it's kind of there forever. So just be careful.
Yeah.
So all that to say, so he sent me this not great tweet, and I'll read it, and then we can talk about it here. I don't even feel the need to attribute this.
No, that's not.
Because I don't. Yeah.
I don't want to put anybody on blast or.
Because it's not. It's certainly not like the John MacArthur level where it's like tens of thousands.
It's just Twitter
to more. No, but like with the MacArthur thing, it's like probably tens to hundreds of thousands of people are just gonna take it because he said it and run with it. That's not necessarily the case with this guy by any stretch of the imagination. So here's the tweet in question. It says, quote, "The most pervasive and pernicious false teaching of our day is that, quote, love your neighbor, end quote, is the greatest commandment in the law." So I'll read that again. He says, the most pervasive and pernicious false teaching of our day is that love your neighbor is the greatest commandment in the law. So I'll give just a couple of super quick things, Trev, and I can just see your frustration right now. So one, again, we all live in insular worlds to a degree. We should all try to get a little bit of diversity in there. I definitely mute and block folks, but like I see a lot of stuff out there in the Christian world. Folks saying love your neighbor is the greatest number 1 commandment in the law. Saying it's the most pervasive and pernicious. I don't even think it's like slightly pervasive.
That's my like initial take with this is just, do we have to do this on Twitter? Can we just not do this on Twitter? Because like, what do you mean by pervasive?
I mean, I'd like to say, can we not do this? But
pervasive,
certainly not in front of the world.
Pervasive in the Christian culture, pervasive in the whole world. I don't know.
Pervasive, like in a denomination. Like I have not heard
pervasive
this.
in Baptist culture, pervasive in conservative Christian culture.
We both read
pervasive in America
a lot and listen to a lot of like.
What do you mean?
We
don't know because it's a tweet. Because it's a tweet. We don't know. I don't know. What do you mean? I don't know.
We don't know.
And then everybody goes off because it's like, here's these words that seem pretty hot takey. And it's like,
Clickbait.
maybe you mean something by this, but do you have a chance to explicate it? No.
But then, to his credit, he got a lot of pushback on that tweet. And then he did do a big old thread that was kind of half.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be gracious.
Okay.
Because, I want folks to be gracious to us when we get things wrong.
Oh, yeah.
He did a long thread where he...
There's some stuff read about it.
Yeah, tried to do like some... I say
What?
Tried, that's...
Exegetical work?
Yeah, he
was doing
did,
some exegetical work.
He did like a partially exegetical thread, partially... I don't want to say didactic exactly. Like he dove into the text a little bit and then kind of tried to back up the heart of what he was getting at while backpedaling a bit. Because, again, I want to be gracious. It really appears that initial tweet was like, call it an attempt to just do a good tweet to like get some traction with a hot take.
Yeah, not that we
perhaps.
understand motives, but just looking at the tweet itself, what you have to go on, it's like you just question, like if this was your brother, if this was me that tweeted that, you just pull me aside and be like, hey brother, like what's going on there? Like
I probably wouldn't say that. You might say that to me.
what would you say?
Like delete that garbage.
Delete that garbage crap. What are you doing, man?
Yeah.
What are you trying to do?
So you said he explained it and he did a little backpedaling and all of that. So what was his point? What did he mean?
That's a really good question.
What did he mean by that? So when he went into the thread, what I was taking away from it was that, and I think this is a true point, that ultimately to say that love your neighbor is the biggest, most important thing, only thing, without like, hey, love God. The only here's the Jesus is the one true God, that kind of thing, that we've really distorted and perverted the gospel. And he's right.
Yeah,
like
there's
theological liberalism is incorrect. Like if we take all the authority out of the Bible and say the only thing authoritative there is when it tells you to do love your neighbor kind of stuff, and just broadly, and however I interpret that is the only truth that's there. Yeah, that's wrong.
Yeah.
But I think that the trouble is for me, and this is where I told you, I think it's right point, wrong text. Because, yeah, you could make a stand on the exclusivity of God, how God demands allegiance, and he must have it. That is a central core doctrine to Christianity, both Old Testament and New Testament. So you can make that point, but the problem is to go to Matthew 22 and try to make it from and trying to like split the first and second greatest commandments apart, which Jesus is explicitly tying them together.
No, the whole point was to tie them together, and not like he weirdly points out. It's not to say, oh, this is like the second one and it's equal or better. No, it's like these two things together are like, this is the sum of obedience.
It says, on these two commandments, in Matthew it says, hang the whole law and the prophets.
Yep.
And I think Mark says that there is no commandment greater than these, plural.
So
these two. So he's
again,
binding them two together.
I want to be honest and clear. I look at that, and what I see is a reaction to more biblically solid folks going, hey, maybe we should take loving our neighbor seriously, and that might have some implications. Maybe we should re-examine some assumptions and traditions and just like stuff we've always done and stuff we've always not done. Maybe loving our neighbor to obey God and to fulfill the thing that the entire law and the prophets rest on. Maybe we should and shouldn't be doing various things around loving our neighbor. This seems to be a bit of a response against, well, I don't want you to tell me what loving my neighbor is, so it's pernicious and pervasive. Like, that sounds like a thing that hyper, I don't know, conservative folks would want to hear and like and retweet, perhaps.
It's almost like it misses the context of what Jesus is doing, right? So this is the very end of Matthew 22, and the whole point of him adding a second thing into the question is to get to the heart of the matter for this Pharisee. And guess what he's going to do in the next verses? It's into Matthew 23, and Matthew points out how Jesus is calling out the Pharisees for hypocrisy, and he says this in verse 23, "Woe to you, experts in the law, and you Pharisees," right? Just like the expert in the law who had just addressed him. "Hypocrites, you give a tenth of mint, dill, and cumin, yet you neglect what is more important in the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You should have done these things without neglecting the other." So notice he's not saying one abrogates the other, right? They come together. But he's saying, blind guides, listen to this. You strain out a gnat, yet swallow a camel. Now, the significance there being the gnat was the smallest unclean animal. The camel was the largest unclean animal. And he's like, you are so concerned about cleanliness. You're just sitting there in your tea, kind of like with your strainer trying to get these gnats out. Meanwhile, you're just gulping down camels. And
all in relation to justice, mercy, these
and
things that I will say that I could be wrong, but it seems like he and others use this line of thinking to push back against trying to think critically about how we can be pursuing justice, mercy, the love of neighbor, and these things.
And I know for myself, as a Bible nerd, as a theological conservative,
which we still are, guys,
I have to hear Jesus on this for myself, because a lot of times, like, if somebody comes against me with like, "Hey, you were wrong here," especially my wife, like, "Hey, this is wrong," like, I'm finding every nuanced way and smart way to think about like how she's wrong in that charge, right? And I might be able to invalidate her arguments with very careful thinking or philosophizing or rationalizing or even sometimes Bible quoting. But at the end of the day, if she's pointing out a broader issue in my life, I'm wrong if I'm doing that.
Right.
Even if I think I've got some sort of biblical point that I'm trying to bring up to defend myself, the point is I'm straining out gnats and swallowing camels at that point. And as Christians, when we read the Gospels, sometimes it's helpful to not read yourself on Jesus' side, but to read yourself on the Pharisees' side, to read yourself on the disciples' side, and let the things that Jesus says, really even against them, come against your own heart to convict you.
And I think we sometimes get, I want to say, comfortable in Christianity, or so comfortable in our faith that we really have a bad taste in our mouth when it comes to correction. It's to say, on this thing that you think about that's happening in our time and in our life, or a way that you think about a certain thing and its theological application or implication, it's to ask, can you be corrected? Especially if you've come to a conclusion on it a long time ago and you said, well, I read this scripture, I read this verse, that's what it means, I'm done. And
yeah,
so
like when we get done thinking about things, it's a dangerous place. And I've had pushback on this with real conversations I've had with real people. That is not to say be open to denying the fundamentals of our faith.
Right.
No. But Paul in the epistles praises Christians for being circumspect and to examining themselves. We should not be so set in our ways that areas of application and practical living out of truths, if we're like, there's only one way to obey these things, everyone else who does it is wrong, or I'm going to question their salvation, or I'm going to look at them as maybe a lower caste of Christian, like that is only pride and arrogance.
I feel like sometimes Christians feel like if they really examine facts, they're going to somehow come into contact with something that contradicts Christianity. I don't know why, but like you'll see people who, like, for example, like they really don't want to study evolution, or they really don't want to study comparative religions, or they really don't want to, and it's like, I don't know if there's like a fear there that they're going to be influenced, but like, one, Jesus said, none of those who are mine can be snatched out of my hand. He said, I am the truth. And so when you are in Christ pursuing the truth, and you're doing that in a biblically submissive to God way, then what are you afraid of?
That's a good question.
Like, because if Christianity is true, and it is, then you're not going to find true things that contradict it.
True. And I agree. I grew up in a church like that. Not to necessarily say that they overtly encourage people not to look things up, but I was a young, inquisitive guy and tried to look into other religions because it wasn't this deterrent of like, oh my goodness, I think I'm going to become something else. I'm going to convert. But it's just like, I want to know more about why what I believe is true and why this other thing isn't. And I think it's a telltale sign in our own hearts if we have that particular practice of, like you said, and I think it is fear ultimately that something's going to get me. I'm going to hear that one argument, or I'm going to hear that one statement, or I'm going to hear that one whatever, or read that one piece of literature. And that's going to be the thing that starts to just really breed doubt in my heart.
And to build those external those artificial walls around ourselves and the little bubbles. I know plenty of kids who grew up in extremely conservative homes, got to college, and then had the realization that, other world religions have similar myths, and then literally like questioned everything because it's the first time they're on their own, first time they're really getting anything outside their carefully curated little deal. And like, if you never come in contact with anything other than what you believe, it's like a bad immune system.
Yeah.
Like you're setting yourself up for failure. And if you're worried about this with your children, I understand. We both have young children. Trevor and I both have young children. And like the balance between protecting them from harmful things as well as...
But the truth is never that.
Yeah.
The truth is never in the category of harmful thing.
Correct.
It can be presented harshly. Sometimes we have to speak the truth in love, right? That's really key. But the truth itself is always like where we want to.
No, I'm talking about folks being afraid of unnecessarily exposing themselves to untrue things for fear that they might find some truth in it or they might deceive themselves or something. I feel like that is potentially more
yeah, and the heart is deceitful,
motivating,
right? Yeah, the heart is deceitful, and
you don't want to inundate yourself with falsehood. You don't want to test your faith by like just consuming a bunch of garbage.
Well, and I think that's the other important point of like no man's an island, right? Like we don't want to just be on our own islands as Christians, right? But being in community with folks. And so as you are in community with folks and as you do have vulnerability to be able to share different things you're reading or talking about or thinking, like then you have sort of that support system around you. And I'm not just saying like go read something that you know is just full of falsehood, but if you're trying to understand how somebody else is thinking, you might see how much you might read enough of it to get into their shoes, right? Like we talked about this on the politics episode too, about understanding someone's position, not just trying to disprove it, but really reading it to get their perspective.
Trying to prove it, see what would convince somebody of its truthfulness.
Because I think there's a value to knowing something, knowing why someone would believe something, like knowing it as fully and as well as its biggest adherents. And if it's something, let's say it's something that's untrue, you know it as well as its biggest proponents, but yet you reject it, that's strong.
Yeah. And I personally do a lot of different studies of world religions and such in apologetics, and I don't think my faith would be as strong as it is, at least in my personal assessment, if I didn't look into those other things. Because then the truth is just more and more refined and reinforced, because it's just like, well, okay, yeah, scripture says this and this other group is saying this other thing. Okay, I get that. I get why they're saying that, but I also get why they're wrong.
Right.
And not that that's a prescription for everybody to go out and research all these things that they don't know about or they're not hearing about in their context. Or
exactly.
But we're just trying to provide some context on what you mean by open-minded.
So, exactly. So, I mean, I would say, I want to say something again about the original impetus in the tweet itself, but rein me in here if you need to, Trev.
All right.
I think it is healthy. I think it is healthy for a community of believing folks who are seeking, to grow in knowledge of the truth through exercise and application of the truth, living, growing in holiness, growing in witness, growing in encouraging the saints around them, growing in being salt and light in front of the world, that a culture of openness to ask questions, to have conversations, to allow people to come in and to voice whatever it is they have to voice in order to interact with them genuinely is a good thing. Silence for the sake of silence, maybe even gatekeeping. Like there are some ways, sure, like gatekeeping is good. You don't want to just put a bunch of filth. Like if you're a pastor or even a parent, it's not like the floodgates are open. You can just put as much garbage in front of my sheep if I'm a pastor or my kid if I'm a parent. Like not at all. But if there are people out there with things to say, genuine criticisms, questions, people who are especially coming to interact genuinely, even if they're wrong, to just be unwilling to interact at all with anything that you disagree with doesn't seem healthy or honoring to God or very secure in one's own faith.
Yeah. So maybe the bigger point here about the tweet, coming full circle back to that, is not even the content of it so much as the presentation.
Yeah.
Kind of that hot, takey, like get a reaction versus like, hey, I'm seeing an issue. Let's kind of walk through textually like what I think might be going on here and get, what do you guys have to think about that? Like, am I on base? Like, is this right? Like, here's what I'm seeing the scriptures say. And then let people interact with that, right? Okay, here's what I mean, that's what we're doing. We're trying to do here, right? We're not going to do it perfectly, but it's like, hey, here's what we see the scripture saying, and interact with it. You know, we are open to being called out on something, correcting, changing tone. That's totally part of the process. But to just like, boom, here's this hot takey thing, and that's my tweet, and I walk away. The question is that helpful?
Yeah, it's what's the fruit in that? What I guess it is to ask the question, what are you trying to accomplish by that? Is it,
and not even for him specifically with that specific tweet, but just the principle of with our online behavior, what are we trying to do? And I mean, this is something I need to preach to myself all the time, and I sometimes have Trevor and my wife call me out on this, be like, hey, maybe calm that down a little bit, and that's good, that's helpful. I need that, but
when you're really good at asking too.
Especially when it is theological. I'm a big arts and entertainment guy. I can't wait to get into more substantive cinemas and substantive stories and substantive songs and all of our cultural interaction. Hot takes in the realm of art and pop culture are fun. They're fun. They can be provocative. They can start interesting conversations. Hot takes in the realm of theology and obedience to God, probably not great.
Yeah.
That's an interesting idea. The difference between those, that is probably for a different topic toss up on a different day. But that's good. That's good, man. I know I'm kind of transitioning here. Did you want to do some substance shout outs?
For sure, yeah. Let's.
Boom.
Hey, listeners, if we're still recording, the way you said that, I didn't know if we were going to cut this out. But feel free. I know Trevor and Vince are the musically talented ones. If we could get like a musical cue for substance shout-outs, like a little intro, that'd be dope. Somebody wants to make that, or we can make that.
I can just go boom, boom, boom into the mic.
And then Vince can go, substance shout-outs.
Just like that. Substance shout-outs.
So do you have them planned?
Dude, I've got mine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hit me.
All right. So, and this one might be a little bit of a longer substance shout-out because there's some backstory here. So, recently, so this artist I've had mixed feelings about, like, loved early on, and then in the middle of the career, not so much. But recently, Lecrae has come out with the album Restoration, and I want to say, like, yeah.
Which in and of itself, I think might be a good thing to talk about. Okay, so you listened to the whole thing?
I've listened to the whole thing a few times now.
Right.
First time I listened, I was like, Second time I listened, I was like, Third time I started looking at the lyrics, and I'm like, yes. Especially, I love the song Self-Discovery. It's like he's talking about, I think what I love about it is he's talking about the struggle that he had. Like, he's acknowledging it, and he's finding God in it, and there's just something real and deep and human about the whole thing. And I just have to say, it's a great album. Like, he's bringing God into his, like, almost like the psalmist does. And it's the kind of Lecrae that I've wanted to see for such a long time.
Yeah, for the last 8 years, I've been kind of.
Yeah, and we've kind of felt like, some of this other stuff. But, now he's saying, like, I was going through stuff. And,
you have to be sympathetic to that. Before it
Yeah.
was like, man, what's happening? Now he's telling us what happened.
Exactly.
Have you listened to it yet, Vince?
I haven't listened to it yet, but after the shout out, I'm very curious.
I listened to it because
Yeah.
I was the biggest. I was there from the jump. I was listening to Christian hip hop before Lecrae. I got Real Talk as soon as it came out. I may or may not have gotten it legally. Who's to say?
Back in the Kazaa days.
But yeah, I was on it immediately, and I could trace my own personal journey is probably pretty similar to yours with my enjoyment and affirmation of Lecrae going up and down over the years. And I've only listened to it twice, but especially the first time when I was able to focus on it more, I was refreshed. I'm not going to say oh man, this is the best ever, but I thought it was really refreshing.
Yeah. It's the first Lecrae album in a long time that I enjoyed listening to. There was a while when I'd listen to a Lecrae album, it'd make me sad. I just felt sad. And I'd listen to a couple of songs, I'd feel sad, and then I'd put on some of his earlier albums. But this one, I find myself, I just put one of the songs on repeat. I like Self-Discovery a lot. I thought it was a great song.
All right, I need to check that out, yeah.
Great
I'm going to
song.
listen to the whole thing again, but that's a solid one.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's my substance shout-outs. Go check it out.
My substance shout-out this week, I have been getting more back to normal with things and listening to more podcasts, and several of mine will probably be in that sphere, but listened to a couple nights ago, finished listening to an episode of the Holy Post that was really excellent. Typically Sky Jitani does the interviews, but this time Phil Vischer did with a young lady named Kaitlyn. I'm going to say Schiess to be safe. I don't recall. I should have got that right ahead of time. About her new book, The Liturgy of Politics, which as of the recording, I think it actually came out today or yesterday. Looks like a really interesting, helpful resource, but just a really excellent conversation about real things. Just what we talked about. Folks talking genuinely about true, substantive things, and it was just a really refreshing interview. Highly recommend. Check that out. We'll tag it in the show notes.
No pressure on the last name pronunciation, but I remember her saying in there that if you say it wrong, it's a German curse word.
Well, that's why I didn't say it the other way.
Okay, good work.
That's good. My substance shout out is honestly an interview segment that Trevor sent me for Jude 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
I actually have the name here.
And mine and Philip's pastor sent that to us.
Okay. And so basically it was an interview with Esau McCaulley.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy interviewing him was Baraka.
And that book looks good too, man.
Yeah. And there was a book he was referencing, Reading While Black. And I'll be honest. The first half of it, I was a little put off.
Yeah,
I won't lie.
What by?
I haven't listened to it yet.
Well, and here's the thing, and you can cut out as much as you want of this. But there, he was making these references about how there was a particular understanding later on in church history about, bringing the revelation of understanding of scripture through Exodus and Old Testament filter, and how black churches were already doing that prior to that time. And I'll be honest, I don't necessarily I totally understand the importance of black culture.
Sure.
Obviously. But what I don't like necessarily about
you didn't have to read a book on that one,
right? No. I just kind of
like I did.
As our white audience laughs nervously.
Is this okay? No. So I appreciate that. However, what I don't necessarily like is, and it's hard to describe it, but it's almost making things necessary to be black. You have to look at it through a black lens or an Asian lens or
so
a
you were
Hispanic
concerned
lens.
about that at the beginning.
Yeah, I was concerned about this understanding a black person kind of needs to see it black, even if that's not necessarily how they learn it.
Almost because it's like a reader hermeneutic.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And and
Well, that's kind of our criticism of Lecrae for a long time.
yeah, so I didn't enjoy that, but the latter half of it was really good. Talking about how, especially dealing with current social justice issues and how the Black individual responds to that, especially when people involved in certain organizations or movements or whatever really feel that they have to make an about face if they enter into it as a Christian, because a lot of noise is being made that this is white man's religion and all of this. So Esau McCaulley's response to that, and I really love Baraka's even questions to introduce it, was really solid, and I think is incredibly helpful for especially me, for a person who's like, I am struggling with answers, not necessarily my faith, but how to move forward, because I know that there is no metric where I move by myself. I have to have my white brothers and sisters in the faith, Asian brothers and sisters in the faith, everybody that are brothers and sisters in the faith. I know that there is no metric where I say I'm a part of the church and I reject that part of the body of Christ.
Right.
So, but it's like, in the height of all of this, how does one deal with it? And I love how he was like, start with the question, did Jesus rise from the grave?
Yeah.
That's where you start. And it's like, all right, if that's where you start, then wherever you go from that is going to be a pretty decent spot. So I really enjoy that.
Truths, right? The fundamental truths. What he was saying about how orthodoxy is not oppressive. That
right.
Like,
oh man.
If orthodoxy is, once again, this comes back to the truth. If orthodoxy is true, then the truth will set you free. Truth is liberating.
Right.
So,
inherently.
So stop being afraid of thinking.
Come on.
Oh
You
man.
can cut that out if you want.
Well, no, that's good. That's good. Good shout out. Nice work, Vince. All right. Well, that is some content today, man.
It is.
Absolutely. And I'm sure listeners are going to want to give some feedback on some of the topics that we've touched on today. Some hot button stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And the goal is to continue interacting with substantive, important,
Good.
yeah. I don't want to say relevant as the buzzwordy thing, but things that are important for our daily lives and living in the time we live in, because that's where we're at.
Yep.
So if you want to get in on the conversation, tell us what you agreed with, what you disagreed with. If you have any questions, got a idea for a topic toss-up.
And tell us why.
Why you agree or disagree, for sure.
Yeah.
No, definitely. You can find us at facebook.com/thesubstancepod. You can find us on Twitter or Instagram at thesubstancepod. And if you want to get on the show, you can send us an email or shoot us a voicemail.
Yeah, especially if you call the phone number at 913-703-3883. You can leave a voicemail on there. It's just going to go to voicemail and leave us your thoughts.
Try to keep it under 60 seconds, but if you want to
keep it brief,
get on the show personally, that's probably the best way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, old-fashioned style, you just want to sit down and write us an email at thesubstancepod@gmail.com. Send us your thoughts.
Got that stamped with a substance guarantee.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about MacArthur. Do you agree with MacArthur? Did you have some issues with what he said like we did? What kind of was your angle on it? I mean, we talked about hot button issue like abortion today. So what did you feel about...
Open those floodgates first. What do you think about abortion?
What did you feel about that?
Trevor's going to read all those emails and I'll listen to what Trevor has to say.
And I will read half. The short ones.
Exactly 50%. No more, no less.
Man. And if you're wondering how to support the show, and you enjoy the content on the Substance Podcast, best way you can support us is by telling others about it.
Yeah, share the episode with your friends. If you like this episode, text it to your best friend. Say, hey, subscribe to this podcast, listen to it, and then come over to my house and we can have a socially distanced conversation about it.
Yeah. And if you do that, let us know, because that'd be dope, and take pictures. Also, I hear that you should tell your domesticated pets.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
always
going to become a thing.
Always tell your dogs and cats.
Okay. And when Apple stores open up, go give us 5 stars on all the phones.
Don't do that. That's dishonest. Don't listen to Philip there. This dude just is like guerrilla marketing 101 over here, and you just got to calm him down sometimes.
And if you want to financially support us, we do have a Cash App.
We do.
And that is at $thesubstancepod.
And we still have the deal where they if they sign up, we get some cash.
Yeah. Ultimately, if you're sending invite links for people who are new to the Cash App and they download it, then you get a bonus if you use our link. So,
and also, I just want to say thank you. We are not raking it in over here at the Substance Podcast, but super genuine from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you to everybody who sent us a couple of bucks here and there.
Yeah.
We're not a big operation. It's just 3 dudes in a basement.
It's part-time for now, but I mean, we have a couple of things that we'd like to be doing here. We're going to be starting to send out when we have guests on. We're going to be starting to do giveaways and send out postage. We want to get our website up and running sometime soon here. So if you want to give in any way or find any value in what we're doing, we appreciate it. Anything you guys send our way.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Awesome. And thank you for your time listening to us. Thank you for your interactions. Just thank you for being you. Nice work.
Depraved sinner.
Oh,
wow, bringing that Puritanism. Bringing it.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Oh.
You worm.
Right. Yeah. You did a great job contributing to your sin.
It's all filthy rags.
Oh, I haven't seen that for you have the best memory for random internet stuff.
What?
Isn't that the internet the Jesus video?
Oh, well. There is that. I wasn't thinking of
Oh, I
that.
thought that's what it was.
Substance shout out.
You watch a silly video once and reference it years later. And I was like, what?
Yeah. That's how I know anything about any movies. If somebody says something, that's funny. That's a funny quote.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys next week.
See you next week.
Bye. That's my jam.
We got anything else to squeeze out of Monday?
I don't think so.
Dude, I think we squeezed Monday.
That's a weird
The
thing
best.
to say. I think we squeezed Monday the best.
Yeah.
That's a meme.
Let's not burn it.
But that was just so bananas to me.
Boom.
Yeet.
Then I was like, oh, this is just all dumb.
That's a spoof, right?
Right?